Hi folks, today we are going to discuss reverse engineering and malware analysis. So I'm going to introduce a number of topics, including static analysis, so when you've got a program and you're trying to figure out how it works just by looking at the program itself. And obviously that's made more complicated by the fact that a lot of system software is distributed in terms of a binary file, so you might not have access to the source code. And also looking at dynamic analysis, which is where you run the program and try and figure out what it does. So let's get started. So first, good starting point is to discuss what reverse engineering is. So reverse engineering has relevance outside of our topic areas, and it can be basically anything where you have some human-made object and you're trying to figure out how it was designed, or what the architecture of that thing is, or what the code of that thing is. So it's, you can take a kind of scientific approach of like looking at this thing and figuring out what makes it tick. And I guess the thing that's unique about it is that it's something that someone else has created, and that we're trying to figure out how it works. And in terms of software reverse engineering, what that means is we're given some software and we figure out how it works, the technical details of what makes that program work. And in just computing in general, it's used a lot. So for example, the Samba project, which provides Windows file sharing but on a Linux system, they had to reverse engineer how that protocol works by just looking at the actual programs on Windows, for example, and the network traffic that they produce, and trying to figure that out, because at the time when that project started, Microsoft didn't publish any specifications about how the protocol worked. It was all proprietary and closed, and they had to try and figure that out from scratch. And same with the Wine project that tries to allow you to run Windows programs on Linux. Again, it was reverse engineering challenge of trying to figure out, well, okay, so what APIs exist in Windows? How do we actually reproduce those? And it was a massive reverse engineering project. Since then, Microsoft have become a little bit more cooperative with the Linux community, but it's a good example of how reverse engineering has practical uses. But in terms of the security side of things, reverse engineering is important because you can use it to audit the security of a system. So if you're given some binary program but not the source code, you might still want to figure out, is this system actually secure if we're about to put it onto our network, for example. You can use the approaches from reverse engineering to patch programs as well. So you could create a binary patch to change the behavior of a program. That could be for security reasons, like patching a security problem. When you don't have access to the source code, you could produce a temporary patch while you're waiting for a vendor to do something about it. Or you could use crack some software, for example, so games that won't let you run them under certain conditions. From a security perspective, someone can basically patch the binary and therefore change the behavior of the program. And obviously, the main thing that we're interested in this topic is for malware analysis. So, what is malware analysis? It's where we study some malicious code to try and figure out the technical details of that code, and things like what's the behavior, what are the actions that this program takes. We might be interested in figuring out, is this some malware that is known, or is this a brand new, in other words, zero-day malware, and this is the first time someone's come across it. And in that case, what are the indicators of infection? So by looking at the details of how the program works, we can figure out, well, how could we tell if a machine is actually infected with this malware? Try and figure out the type of malware it is. So for example, is it a worm or a Trojan horse or a virus? And so we can, by analyzing the behavior, we can figure that out. We can try and figure out authorship. Obviously, attribution's very difficult with a lot of cybersecurity things, but we can look at, what languages was the code written in, what was the date that the program, when it was compiled, and things like that is in there in the metadata of the program, and where on the system is it likely to put itself. So is it going to put insert itself on startup on on a Linux or a Windows system, and how can we remove it? So again, by looking at the source code, by looking at the binary code, we can figure out the answers to these questions. So it can help us if we're investigating an incident. So for example, if you're working in a company and they have the resources to do so, and they've had like a targeted or some kind of malware attack, you could basically do this investigation as part of your incident response plan, and that could allow you to figure out what the malware was likely to have done when it ran. So what information does that malware access when it runs, what actions does it take, and therefore you can compare that to your log files and figure out whether that actually happened, and figure out, is this a targeted attack, or is this some malware that was specifically written for us, for this company, to attack this company? More often than not, it's just some malware that is spreading from system to system and happens to get us. And if we're interested in trying to prevent it from hitting our other machines in the organization, or if we're working for an anti-malware company, we can develop some signatures. So malware signature, for example, or an IDS or IPS signature to detect the malware over the network. So some of the approaches that we can take is static analysis, which is where we do our analysis while the malware is not running. And so that's offline analysis. So you take the executable and you analyze that. You never need to run it, so that's a lot safer. Then dynamic analysis, which is where you actually run the malware and see what it does. So you actually start the process up and analyze what that process is doing while it's running. So that could be looking at things like, well, high-level view, what does it change on the system that it's running on? And you can do a live analysis of all the network use, memory contents, but you can also do some sort of tracing of that program to look at what it's doing as it's doing it. So in order to understand what we're about to talk about, it's helpful to go back to basics in terms of how compiled binary programs work. So we start off with some C code, for example, or C++ or whatever language, and we have a compiler that takes that and transforms it into some assembly code usually, or some other representation of the low-level behavior of what the CPU needs to do in order to actually carry out the instructions within the program. So that will produce some assembly code or an intermediate representation, but it outputs, the compiler outputs something which is like, these are low-level instructions. And then the assembly code is run through an assembler, which generates the object code, which is basically the actual machine language, which is very close to the assembly language, but it's a binary language, binary representation that humans can't read. And that is object code. And then that, along with the libraries, are combined using a linker to actually produce the executable file. So we've gone from a step of having some source code that a human could read, like a C code, if you know how to read C code, which is why you will learn this stuff so that you can understand this. But we have some C code, we run it through, produce some assembly code, which some humans, less humans, can read, because it becomes more and more, verbose. There's lots and lots of small instructions that a CPU takes. And then that assembly code becomes object code, which is actually the binary code that a human can't read, and that all gets linked together with any other libraries that it needs to do its job. So on Windows, those are like DLL files. On Linux, that's a .so file. But basically, then it produces the actual executable. So again, on Windows, that's a .exe, and on Linux, that's just an executable file. So the executable files are stored in a format that's readable by the operating system. So on a Linux and most other Unix systems, that's an ELF format, so executable and linkable format. On Windows, it's a PE format, so portable executable. And on Mac OS X, that's the Mac O specification. And so those executables that you have are binary files that contains metadata as well. So it'll include the date that the program was compiled, the version information of the program, for example, some information about the libraries it links to, the machine code itself, variables, debug symbols, icons, any other like media files that are kind of all wrapped up into that executable file. And then when we're analyzing it for static analysis, we could do looking at the hex representation of it. So basically, binary is just the raw data that's stored on the disk, and how we want to view that on a computer screen, we could look at it in terms of, no one ever would, but you could look at it in terms of zeros and ones. There's literally all the bits that are stored on the hard disk, for example. It's pretty much pointless looking at it that way because I don't think there are very many humans that are alive today that can look at some binary code and actually make sense of it without spending, a ridiculous amount of time. So you can look at the hex representation, which just kind of summarizes that information into less characters that can be displayed on the screen. That can be helpful because it's an easier way of looking at what's stored on the disk if it's raw. But often what's there might be in terms of strings, so something a human could read, so some words, for example, in which case we would look at the ASCII representation. And that can give us like clues about what it is. So even if you don't look at any of the machine code and the actual machine code instructions of what the program does, you can look at the strings from a program and then you'll just see any bits in the code that are human readable. And that might have things like hard-coded messages or IP addresses. A lot of malware that's named funny names is because, like WannaCry, for example, has the string WannaCry in the program somewhere, and so they name it after a string that they find within the program. But the actual program might be obfuscated or encrypted, which makes this process harder to pull out strings. But there are analysis techniques that we'll learn later on that we can use to try and grab as much information out as we can and to make sense of it. So, we could look at the machine code. So when we look at the machine code, you can look at it in the binary representation, which again, it doesn't mean a lot to humans. So you can run it through a disassembler and it reverses that step of getting the assembly code back out. So we take the machine code, we run it through a disassembler, and that gives us some assembly code. Similarly, we could take the assembly code and run it through a decompiler, and it gives us some C code. It doesn't give us back the same C code it started with, but it's trying to look at the assembly and it produces something like the original with the same functionality as the original, but often harder to read because it's not written by a human. And we can also look at things like unpacking, detecting, ways that the program might have been kind of like made difficult for us, and we'll go into the details of that later on. But there are all sorts of techniques we can use to try and grab stuff out that's going to make sense to us. And we'll go into those things in more detail on another occasion. So there are some tools that you can use to simplify these processes. So readelf is a great tool for looking at Linux binaries. And so it'll extract out the metadata, the header information, and all sorts of interesting stuff out of a Linux executable. Object dump is a disassembler, so you can generate assembly code for either Windows or Linux binaries. LDD will tell you about the libraries that a Linux executable an ELF file is linked to. And PE Scanner is a similar tool for Windows that tells you about the metadata and about a Windows executable. So there are some advanced tools, and we're going to look at some of these in a lot more detail later on in a separate topic. But there are things like Ghidra, Radar, and IDA, the interactive disassembler, which are tools that can really have very advanced features to allow you to reverse engineer some code. But often you'll be looking at the assembly, so disassembled and decompiled code out of an executable, and it shows you things like the flow of logic, and so it does some really amazing stuff for us, and we're going to look at that later. But that can help us to make sense of these things.